Good morning. Good to have you with us. I'm Joe Fryer. Savannah is on assignment. We start this hour with the extreme weather that is sweeping across much of the country. Heat alerts stretch from southwest Texas all the way up to Washington state, impacting some 19 million people. The temperatures in some parts of the country could hit 15 degrees higher than normal today. The South is also sweating through some powerful storms. In Alabama, a major cleanup is underway after an overnight storm left a mess in Montgomery. Workers had to use heavy-duty equipment to pick up mangled metal and move debris from roadways so utility crews could restore power. In North Texas, hail the size of baseballs slammed into cars that were driving along the I-40 corridor near Amarillo. And farther out west, crews from Utah to Nevada are urgently battling a number of raging wildfires. NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson is tracking these weather woes as the latest from Houston. Priscilla, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. It is summer and it is hot. You have 19 million people across the country who are under heat advisories and heat warnings. Along the Gulf Coast, we are dealing with the soaring temperatures and the stifling humidity that is making it feel like triple-digit heat in some areas. Meanwhile, out west, you've got those folks dealing with not only dry conditions, but also the heat, and that is fueling some of these massive wildfires that we're seeing out in Utah. You have tens of thousands of acres that are charred as firefighters there are working to contain the blaze. And you have other parts of the country who are dealing with the severe weather and severe thunderstorms. So out in Oklahoma, we saw streets beginning to flood and become fast-moving streams, so much so that firefighters actually had to go out and help to trap some of those motorists. We also saw in northwest Texas and Colorado hail just pummeling communities there, and in Tennessee and Alabama, cleanup underway from severe storms, with folks there trying to get a lot of that debris and those big trees moved off of the roadway so that they can get things back moving. So it is just soaring temperatures, severe storms, making for a summer of extreme weather that is just heating up.
All right, Priscilla, thank you for more on these severe storms and these heat warnings. Let's get your morning news now. Weather. Angie Lastman joins us with the forecast. Angie, good morning.
Hi there, Joe. Good morning to you. We've, of course, got to start with that heat that Priscilla was just mentioning. 19 million people under at least moderate to major heat risks today. You can see some of those major cities include El Paso, Tucson, Phoenix, Yuma, and Los Angeles. And that's, of course, because of where our temperatures are going to end up by later this afternoon. You will have the dry heat across parts of the Southwest, places like Phoenix, Albuquerque, El Paso, but you're still going to hit 111 in Phoenix today. We've got 103 on tap for Las Vegas. A little farther to the south, that's where we'll have all that humidity across parts of Texas. 96 degrees in Dallas and feeling like 101, 94 in Houston and feeling like 103. So it's going to be quite uncomfortable. Similar story, actually. You've probably seen this all over social media and your headlines this morning. We've got a really intense heat wave happening across parts of Europe. This omega blocking pattern is setting up. That's, of course, helping to keep all of the heat in place. That really strong high pressure, it really acts as a lid over the surface, so there's nowhere for any cool air to kind of work into that region, and that is leaving us with these highs more than 30 degrees above average in some of these places. We've got Paris set to hit 102 and 103 over the next couple of days, 109 in Bordeaux, Frankfurt 100 degrees on Thursday, and we really don't see a whole lot of relief for a large area as we get into the next short term. At least we will have a little bit of some relief farther to the west. So the UK and France will see a bit of temperature swings into the 70s by Sunday, 80s in Paris by Sunday. So we'll have a little bit of a reprieve for folks there, but we've got to get through, a lot of heat in the meantime. Here's the deal, though. In the center of the U.S., we've still got these flood alerts that are up. Notice the flash flood warnings and a whole lot of thunderstorms that are kind of working through this region. We are concerned about the flooding. We're also concerned about some stronger storms developing as the afternoon and evening get underway, specifically across areas that you see in that yellow shade and that orange shade. The enhanced risk is over parts of Wyoming, Colorado. You can see the slight risk for Salt Lake City as well. And it's the hail, pretty large in size, up to 4 inches, as well as those wind gusts up to 75 miles per hour. And even a couple of tornadoes will be possible. That goes through the evening hours again. So keep an eye on that here as you get through the rest of your day. Otherwise, as we get into tomorrow, we'll see some of these morning kind of thunderstorms give way to afternoon stronger storms. So again, another slight risk no surprise. We've got all the ingredients there. It's the hail, the damaging winds, and a couple of tornadoes stretching from Springfield through Dodge City and up through Casper. So we'll be watching for, again, some kind of stormy conditions across the Rockies, even as we get into tomorrow, Joe.
A lot to watch, and unreal that we're doing the Europe forecast right now. That's just how hot it is there.
Indeed.
Right, Angie, thank you. Yes. In the Middle East, Secretary of State Marco Rubio is kicking off his first tour of the Gulf region since last week's memorandum of understanding was signed between the U.S. and Iran. That framework agreement gives 60 days for negotiators to hash out a final peace deal. It remains in place despite conflicting messaging from the U.S. and Iran over nuclear inspections and the unfreezing of assets. After touching down in the United Arab Emirates, Rubio said he'd be discussing the agreement with Gulf leaders and said Iran would not be allowed to charge tolls in that vital Strait of Hormuz.
It's an international waterway. No country is allowed to charge tolls or fees on an international waterway. That's existing international law. That's the way it is in international waterways all over the world, and that's the way we expect it'll be here.
NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley joins us now with the latest from Tel Aviv. Matt, good morning. This mission is aimed at pitching this agreement to some skeptical Gulf allies. So how tough a sell does Rubio have here? What are some of those countries' concerns?
Now, well, remember, Joe, I mean, like Israel, where I'm standing right now, America's Gulf allies were active in the fighting in the sense that Iran attacked them, just like Iran attacked here in Israel. But they weren't active in really any way or represented, except for the country of Qatar, in those negotiations that arrived at that memorandum of understanding that was signed last week, and that also have led to these negotiations that are ongoing in a very abortive sense right now as we speak. So this is going to be a tough sell for Marco Rubio because, again, just like Israel, these countries are stakeholders in the war but have had no say in its resolution. One of the things that they're very likely to mention is that the Memorandum of Understanding makes no mention of Iran's ballistic nuclear missile capacity. Remember, it was those ballistic missiles that really pelted places like here and Israel and all throughout the Gulf, Kuwait, Bahrain, as recently as just a couple of weeks ago. They're also going to be concerned about the 60-day negotiations leading up to some sort of deal around Iran's potential nuclear weapons program. A nuclear weapons program that, by the way, Iran has consistently denied having for generations, even though they do now have highly enriched uranium. The other thing that these Gulf countries are going to be sharing in their concerns with Israel is Iran's funding for proxy groups throughout the region. Israel has long resented and fought against Iranian-backed groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in the Gaza Strip, the Houthis in Yemen, other groups throughout Syria, Iraq. All of these groups are also at odds with the Sunni-led monarchies in the Gulf region. So again, all three of those concerns, all of them are going to be very, very major issues for the Gulf countries, and all of them have so far gone unanswered in that Memorandum of Understanding.
Matt, let's talk about some of the conflicting statements we're getting from Iran and the U.S. about some of the points in the agreement, specifically those nuclear inspections. Is it clear if inspectors will visit Iran's nuclear sites as part of this? What's the UN's nuclear watchdog saying?
Well, we just heard from the United States, from several officials, including, we heard from J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, that the IAEA inspectors are going to be heading in to Iran. The Iranians have said that there was no such agreement on that it was barely even discussed. We heard from the head of the IAEA, who assured the public that there are going to be nuclear inspections from that UN watchdog group. Important to note here, Joe, the Iranians and the IAEA never really stopped all of the inspections by the IAEA. It was only after the Israeli and American attacks on Iranian nuclear facilities last June that the Iranians said that the IAEA would no longer have regular access or any access to nuclear enrichment facilities. Other nuclear facilities that aren't enriching, but that are, for example, like the Bushehr plant operating a power plant, those are technically, in theory, still able to be accessed by the IAEA.
Matt, while we have you closer to home where you are, a new report by a UN Commission of Inquiry says that Israel continues to commit genocide in Gaza, war crimes in the occupied West Bank by deliberately targeting Palestinian children. Israel has strongly denied the report, calling it a, quote, libelous sham. What more can you tell us about the report's findings and how Israel's responding?
Yeah, I mean, Israel is responding the way it always does to these kinds of reports, saying that they are false and that the United Nations has some kind of inherent bias against the state of Israel. This has been Israel's line, not just since October 7th, but really for quite a long time, saying the United Nations is populated by left-wingers who are opposed to Israel and who are infected with global anti-Semitism. This is going to be a very bracing announcement, even more so than the others, because, of course, the fighting in the Gaza Strip, as far as Israel is concerned, has stopped for the moment. The Israelis fault Hamas for refusing to disarm, for the continuing impasse. The Israelis have said, though, and we heard this from Benjamin Netanyahu, that they are planning on expanding their footprint in Gaza to beyond the 60% of the Strip that they already control. So clearly, while there might not be full-on fighting, there is still quite a lot of violence and disagreement in Gaza. Joe?
All right. Matt Bradley in Tel Aviv. Matt, thank you so much. In Washington, Republicans are issuing a rare rebuke of President Trump over the war with Iran. 4 Senate Republicans sided with Democrats yesterday, passing a war powers resolution that calls on the president to end that conflict. It is a largely symbolic measure, one that passed in the House earlier this month. The resolution urges Mr. Trump to withdraw U.S. troops from the region or seek congressional approval for any further military action against Iran. NBC News legal affairs reporter Gary Grumbach joins us with more on this and some other headlines out of Washington. Gary, good morning. We've seen a vote fail on this resolution several times in the Senate since the war with Iran began in February. So what finally moved the needle for at least some of these Republicans, and how is the White House responding to this?
Yeah, this is effectively just a slap on the wrist, Joe. They're upset that this war is happening, and they're upset that they don't have authorization to do anything about this war. They weren't given the opportunity to do that. So they've done this many times before. It hasn't worked out in terms of passing this resolution. It did this time in part because of 4 Republicans who voted for the resolution, including Senator Rand Paul and Senator Bill Cassidy. It also had to do with a couple absences on the Republican side, including Mitch McConnell and Dave McCormick, who did not vote against this resolution. So it did end up passing. Now, this is very symbolic, as you mentioned. It does not actually have any teeth. It does not go to the White House for a signature. The president wouldn't sign it, even if he could sign it. And the White House is really downplaying this, saying Democrats finally got this passed as soon as the war finally ended. And this happened because of those absences of Republicans. The president is, however, posting on Truth Social, these senators have just made my job more difficult. Joe.
All right, Gary, President Trump is expected to actually visit Capitol Hill today to address some other frustrations with Republican lawmakers. That includes his demands for lawmakers to pass this election security bill that does not have enough votes to pass the House. What more should we know about this?
Yeah, this is about the Save America Act. This is a controversial piece of legislation that requires photo ID and proof of citizenship in order to be able to vote in future elections. Senate Republicans hope to get him down during lunch today and say, hey, this is not going to pass the way it's written right now. This is not going to pass in the Senate at all at the moment. And we've seen over the past couple of months, they've tried to tie this to other important pieces of legislation, things like keeping the government open or immigration legislation. And that hasn't worked either. And we've seen the president try to go the executive order route on some of these issues, right? Trying to get this all done by signing executive orders on these issues. Judges across the country are knocking those down as well. So they've certainly got some work to do on the Save America Act content, Joe.
And Gary, some Republicans also frustrated with President Trump's choice to oversee the Department of National Intelligence, the DNI, at least for now. Bill Pulte was sworn in as the acting director of the department on Friday. That's despite having no experience in intelligence. That's why some Republicans are so upset. What have his first few days in the post looked like?
Yeah, he's had a busy couple days. He has pretty much removed the counterterrorism office of the Director of National Intelligence office. 400 people have been removed from that office, according to NBC News reporting. And Congress is not happy about that either. You might imagine Senator Tom Tillis is pretty upset. Here's what he had to say.
If Pulte does a reduction in force the way that I've been engaged to do it before, where you do the analysis, you make sure you retain the most capable people, and you only eliminate the people whose jobs can be either automated or never should have been there, good. My guess is, based on his past experience, it's just going to be another hot, steamy pile of dough.
So Bill Pulte is acting director at the moment. He would have to be confirmed by the Senate to be fully a confirmed director of national intelligence. That doesn't seem likely based on Tillis's comments there and some of the other comments from senators that we've heard yesterday. Joe.
Yeah, we've got the bleeping machine out early this morning. Gary Grumbach in Washington, thank you so much. It is Wednesday morning, which means we've got some election results for some key primary races and runoffs. Voters in 4 states went to the polls yesterday, setting the stage for this year's midterms. Here in New York, it was a big night for the liberal wing of the Democratic Party. Mayor Zohran Mamdani put his influence to the test, backing 3 congressional candidates, and he was 3 for 3 last night. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Julie Sirkin is here to help break down the results for us. Julie, good to have you with us. We'll start there in New York. Big night for progressives, especially the Democratic Socialist Party. Walk us through Mamdani's candidates' wins here.
Joe, it's not just the bleep machine going this morning. I think it's the siren machine warning Democratic leaders and the establishment of what we just saw last night in New York. Mamdani sweeping all 3 races that he had a hand in endorsing in. I think this was a big surprise, especially New York 13, where the Congressional Hispanic Caucus chair has been serving for more than a decade, really ingrained in that community, and Dominican Republic community, a lot of voters there. And yet they picked his opponent, Daria Liza Avila Chevalier. She is somebody who not only doesn't have a lot of experience, but was an early organizer from Mamdani, endorsed him early on. Similar story in New York 7 with Claire Valdez, winning against the establishment pick, Antonio Reynoso. And then a similar story in New York 10, where I was last night, Brad Lander taking the stage with Zohran Mamdani, managing to defeat 2 incumbents. It really is a story of the insurgent wing versus the classic Democratic establishment, and certainly leaders have to be paying attention.
I live in the 1st district you mentioned, and I can tell you the ads were nonstop.
Yeah,
nonstop in that one there. All right, let's talk about South Carolina, because this was a little unusual. We had a double endorsement in the race for South Carolina governor on the Republican side of things. So from President Trump, I should say, double endorsement. Who came out on top?
Yeah, it was endorsement wars, right, between Mamdani in New York and President Trump in South Carolina. This was an interesting one. A couple of weeks ago, President Trump threw his endorsement behind Pamela Vett. She was the lieutenant governor in this state. That was back when it was a 5-person race, and Congresswoman Nancy Mace was in it, so President Trump wanted to send her a message. Well, fast forward to Friday of this past weekend. Trump posted on Truth Social saying, actually, I think I'll endorse not only Pamela Vett, but also Alan Wilson, who happens to be the son of a Republican congressman. President Trump needs all the votes he can get on Capitol Hill. And guess what? That Republican congressman's son ended up winning last night. Alan Wilson was the attorney general in the state. Even though Yvette was leading him last time, he eked it out last night. And I think that's also a sign of how powerful not only Mamdani's endorsement is on the left, but the president's endorsement is on the right.
And it's always interesting because you get the sort of wings of the party bringing the candidates, but in the middle, when you come to the general election, oftentimes you have middle ground voters who are kind of like, I don't know who I want in these races.
Yeah.
So we'll see how all that plays out. 2 states down, we have 2 more to go, 2 very different states. Maryland, a blue state, Utah, a very red state. What did we see in those states, and what does that tell us about what's coming up later?
There was some good news for the establishment in these states. Let's start with Democrats, for example. And I want to actually go back to New York really quick, because Democratic establishment, the leaders ended up winning in New York 12 as well with Michael Lasher. He had the backing of Kathy Hochul, Jerry Nadler, who was exiting the seat, Hakeem Jeffries. A similar story in Maryland, where, for example, Steny Hoyer's pick to succeed him in the 5th district, he ended up choosing Adrienne Boafo, and that is who ended up winning last night. And it wasn't an easy order because there were 23 candidates in that field.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, a big race. So that is a huge win for Democratic leaders. You had a race, for example, April McLean Delaney, who beat David Trone last time when he decided to run for Senate. Trone wanted a seat back. Didn't work out for him. You can see it on your screen there. The incumbent ended up winning. Let's move over to Utah real quick, because this is a big one. Democrats' first shot at a congressional seat in 5 years because of a redistricting battle, not the one President Trump pushed, but one that has been tied up in the courts to try and root out gerrymandering. Democrats have a really good shot there, almost guaranteeing that they will send a Democrat in November. Ben McAdams is the one who won yesterday, and that is also somebody who used to serve in that seat. He last held it 5 years ago when Democrats held that seat. The candidate backed by Bernie Sanders, the more progressives, ended up losing. So you have a tale of 2 different stories depending on where you are in the country.
All right, Julie Sirkin, good to have you with us, walking through all of the results. Appreciate it. The nation's airlines are issuing a warning, sparking some concerns about air safety. They say close calls in the sky may be happening more often than many travelers realize, and that not all of them are being reported. This warning comes after a very close call in Boston. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello has more.
The most recent close call happened this weekend. Confusion as a Delta flight aborted its landing in Boston after a cockpit collision alert warned that an American jet was just 300 feet away on an intersecting runway.
Delta 2331 going around because of American.
American 3161, where you going?
You cleared us for takeoff, 3161.
A stunning revelation from the organization that represents the nation's airlines.
There are many more, thousands of more of near misses than are probably out there in the public and that, get the headlines. There are hundreds of them every single day.
But only a fraction make the news.
The FAA says most reported incidents are not close calls and that runway incursion rates have decreased more than 10% since last year.
In April, the FAA says two Southwest planes came within 500 feet of each other over Nashville.
Cancel your landing clearance, cancel your approach clearance.
And a close call between two regional jets at New York's JFK airport.
You're flying through the approach course runway 31 west, correct immediately.
Wilco, Brickyard 4464.
And following horrific crashes in Washington, Louisville, and New York.
This has been a year when we've had many serious close calls.
The pilots union and NTSB want Congress to require all planes to have precise GPS-based air traffic receivers that show surrounding air traffic, something the American Airlines crew did not have in the fatal midair crash over Washington.
If we don't have a deadline, it will never happen.
While the Senate wants to set a deadline, the House has declined, concerned that it would create an excessive burden on airlines and aircraft owners.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.